So this will be a quick video on how I used emitters in my scene to add some extra detail I wouldn't be able to have gotten in there otherwise. And Tap Giles had brought up a couple of good points that I'll address in this video. One of the first ones was, what does the scene look like if you can't see the things that you're emitting? And in the scene, you can see that most of my main pieces, all the buildings, some of the foundations, a couple of the trees, the major outside walls, roads, everything like that, anything that's kind of big and major, they're all in here already. The only thing I'm using the spawners or the emitters for is for any kind of ground cover. So all these green dots in here are all the emitters, and they're actually emitting groups of plants or palm trees over here, down here on the main street. These are the emitters for the lamp posts. I should have colored them differently, but hindsight's a hell of a thing, I guess. Over here in the park area, this yellow circles over here are the spawners for the benches, or the emitters for the benches, I'm sorry. Over here is the bus stop emitters. Some of the stuff I recognize because I went through and built it, obviously, but I can tell the doubled up ones are my bus stop emitters because one's a bench and one is the awning for the cover. And I explained some of that in a Reddit post that I had made, but basically every time you emit something, as soon as you target it, it saves that data into your thermos over here. So if I had saved the bench in one emitter and the bench and the awning as the bus stop in its own emitter, it would eat up two benches. The benches aren't that costly; they're around a little less than 1%, but over time things will add up, and anything that I'm emitting isn't essential to the gameplay for this. This level isn't finished. There's a major set piece that needs to go here, and I believe there's a couple of inside pieces I would like to decorate in here, but the major gameplay elements are in here. There's a couple of enemies that I had saved. They have their logic in them. I just hid them for this demonstration. I'm having trouble with the gunplay, but over here I imported the Media Molecules first-person shooter with all its logic on top of the puppet I have in here. So this gameplay thermo will go down a little bit from that puppet. I think it's around 6%, and that'll leave me enough room for the set piece over here and to finish up the decorating the interiors of the buildings with just little aesthetic pieces. So Tap Giles had also asked me what's the benefits for this, if it really pays off, and in some cases it doesn't. I had gone through and crunched the numbers, and it seems I went a little kind of happy with the spawners, thinking I was saving some memory. So in this spawner over here, I have a car wreck, and I for some reason thought that this was eating up more gameplay thermo than it was, and this was actually around less than 1%. So in some cases like this, it doesn't pay off, and I'll have to go through and I can spawn. I can place in a bunch of these into the scene. I don't imagine placing any more than 4 or 5 of these anyway in here. So for that, the emitter won't pay off. But for something like these lampposts that run up and down the street here, I've done the numbers, and in total in my scene here, I have 17 chips that spawn a total of 68 lampposts. The chips themselves cost 1% in total. When all of the lampposts were placed into the scene, it was a total of 6%. And right now, with the occlusion on the chip, there's only about 16 at a time when the player's playing the game, and that eats 2%. So that's half. So the 1% from all of the chips that I have to emit the lampposts plus the total amount you'll ever see equals to 3%, which is half of if I had placed all of these lampposts down this main street here. So the 3% there, it does pay off in something that's I'm trying to save every last bit. But the bigger benefit is something like this, and these are the ground plant spawners, and it spawns this little group of plants here. And this is what I will walk everyone through on how I set these up, and just the basic workflow of putting these into your scene. It's pretty much just like anything else. We're gonna group everything, copy into the chip, and then copy the chip over and over. These aren't placed very well right now. I just created this new ground texture, or ground mesh, whatever you want to call it, right before I had made this, so I have to go through and kind of readjust the emitters to each different variation in the new ground there. But it wouldn't have been any different if you had placed the plants all individually. So I had set up a strip down scene of this. Okay, so this is the strip down scene. As you can see, all the chips are removed, and before we were 77% gameplay thermo, and all the chips that you saw before were only 5% of the taking like some static, what I like to call static gameplay thermo. During runtime, this will fluctuate as we emit and destroy things, and I'll display that on how we do that now. So these are plants that I picked from the Dreamiverse. I am not super great at modeling, and other people are so much better, so I like to take advantage of things that people create. So it's the whole point of Dreams, is to share and collaborate and help everyone with their strengths and their weaknesses, and my weakness is definitely modeling. I would not be able to make anything as good a quality as this, so I'm very happy that people have made these and they shared them so that other people like me are able to use them. So I'd pick these off the Dreamiverse. I had set them up, I spread them out and set them kind of how I liked it. Kind of looks good to me. So we could always adjust this later, and I'll show you right now how we're going to do that. And this step is pretty important, so if you ever want to go back and change anything, as long as you make sure you do this along the way, then we can always update these patches or chips or whatever we're doing as we're spawning them around if we have any major problems. So when I place these down, select them all and turn them into make them into a group, and you're going to come over here and you're going to save that as a new creation. I had already done this because obviously this is in my other scene. So we'll go to the group by itself, and here you can see in each plant I had made a little sound effect. I had taken off the collision for any of these so the player can run through them, so don't get blocked by them. Obviously don't want to get blocked by a plant, and these aren't important to gameplay at all. Like I said, the emitters I'm just using for aesthetic purposes to add some more detail to the environment to make it more lively. So these just have a trigger zone, and then it'll play a couple different sounds that I'd cut up. I've used the trigger zones because there's no collision on them, so I couldn't use a touch sensor or anything like that for the player. Just won't be able to collide with it. And zones do take up some memory, but since we'll be emitting these on and off, it's not gonna be too much. So once you have that saved, we can go back into our main scene. I don't have to save this, we don't really do anything. Go back over here where we had them, or where I had set them up. And we'll pull in the chip that I use for occlusion. One thing I forgot to mention in the other scene is that all the chips, while they are green, have the green set for plants, and as well as the palm trees. I had just when I switched this over to the palm tree, obviously the label changes, but then also I had changed the front of this to a different icon. I believe it used the mountain icon. Why? I don't know. And just that way, so when I was looking at when you look at all the different green chips, you can see the difference. Okay, this is my ground plant spawner, and this is my, this would be my palm tree spawner if we were in the other scene. Then it's just, when you look at it like this, it's just a little bit quicker to see if you have maybe two of these doubled up too close together. Just gives you a quick reference guide to see kind of where your spawners are at, and if you're not overlapping them too much. So let's look into this, and we'll set it up, and I'll show you how it works. Basically, it's just a laser scope that detects the front of the player here. And on the front of the player, if we go into preview and visibility, there is a cube there. I couldn't group the cube into the puppet itself because then it will share a label, and then I could not get the laser scope to detect just the front of the player. I tried to change the label on something like this, or just even just group the cube into the puppet itself, but then it shares one label and you can't detect the front of the player. I'm pretty sure I came up with a better way to a more efficient way, I should say, for this system. I haven't tried it out yet, so if I manage to get it up and running and it does work better, then I'll update it. But right now, you see the only thing that's blocking the laser from hitting the cube is the player's body, which isn't so good. We have a fairly large, 180 degree or even more than 180 degrees where the scope can find it. So it's not super efficient, so that is going to be much larger than our field of view, so we're going to lose some efficiency on that gameplay thermo. But the other reason why this cube is kind of big too is because I noticed during I always forget the mode, something simple too, the test mode, you can see the laser beam, it'll kind of ping back and forth when the player is moving, and it would fall off of this block, so when it was a lot smaller, so I had to make it a little bit bigger, which does affect it. Like I said, the area of occlusion that we're hitting isn't super optimized, but I'll work on it a little bit better and make this more efficient. It's been a few weeks. I've been trying to figure this out and kind of hone in how to do this. It's getting better and better. It's a lot better than it was at first. So that's the laser beam. The laser beam pretty much just feeds into this emitter as soon as it detects that cube, just to emit our ground cover or whatever kind of asset we want to emit very fast. And then everything else here is just a despawn timer. So if you run behind, say, like a block like this, or quick behind the building and back out, or you spin around real fast, anything like that, there's a little bit of a delay before the object is destroyed, just so things don't flash in and out. I've read this set to 1 second as a default. If you get into heavier areas for ground cover or anything you're spawning or emitting, keep saying spawning, you can always change that down. I had done that over here because I was maxing out on my gameplay thermo, and then once you max out on the gameplay thermo, it will stop emitting any objects. So I was having gaps in the street lamps for Main Street, which was pretty ugly. So I had to tweak it a little bit better. But all in due time. It'll all come together. So, once we have our chip in here, you know kind of how it works. This is, like I said, this is just a check to make sure that the laser scope is not detecting the player and this timer has run out, and then it'll go destroy the object that we're emitting. So we're just going to go open our emitter menu, and we're going to select any one of these plants that's already grouped together. And then we'll see where the plants are being emitted, and we'll just move this down to about the height. I'm not going to go crazy and super perfect this, because I do have to go back into the main scene and fix this all. Since, like I said, this is a new ground I had just put in. So this menu we're going to leave open, and the reason we're going to do that, we're going to close this main microchip. So if we ever have to go back and tweak any of the spawners, we can just open it up and we'll see the object we're emitting and exactly where it's being emitted immediately. So it just saves a little bit of time when we're doing that. So now that this is all pretty much ready to go, we're going to again save as a new creation down here. I already have, so I'm not going to do that because then I'll have a duplicate. And I really wish that in the future update we can get a feature where we could just kind of select this, and then I can, you can make a change to whatever the objects in here, or whatever, come up with a better, more efficient logic system or anything like that, and then I'd be able to update the source and not just edit the source. That would be awesome, but we don't have that right now. So then how we're going to move this around the world is just like any other thing in Dreams. I'm just going to, oops, I forgot I wasn't on important thing, forgot. I like to use precise move when doing this. Any kind of stuff like this, I like to use the DualShock. I do have the move controllers, which are a little bit easier to fly around with and to model with, but I found in kind of making anything that's kind of grid based, and this is obviously kind of like a like a city layout, so 90-degree angles for all the building placements in the roads and anything like that. I do like to use the DualShock. It is more accurate than using the moves. The moves kind of drift a little bit and it gets a little annoying sometimes, so the DualShock for stuff like this is I find a lot easier. So this whole pretty much everything I did here is with the DualShock. Some of the modeling, like the details on the concrete walls, though, I had done with the moves. So anyway, now that we're in precise move, basically I can grab this, copy it, and it's going to be very hard to move. You have to give a lot of angle to get it to move into any other axis once you start it on one axis. So you really have to kind of push it back and forth. So the reason why I do it like this is because I like to snap it to oops, zoom out a little bit here. Snap the Y down. Since we already set our level for the group of plants to our ground level, don't want to kind of change that too much. So it's just kind of easier to do it to the precise move that way. The only other thing you have to remember for doing this is that once I place this microchip, that the laser scope and emitter will be in that spot unless I open the microchip and edit the placement of those two. I don't know any other way that I can have the laser scope kind of follow the chip at all and the emitter. I might be missing something in the microchip, or if anyone knows, I'd definitely like to know about that, because it is kind of annoying, because if I place this and I want to edit this and I move it, I'll show you. So I want to move that group of plants a little bit more away from this little shed kind of area here. The laser scope will stay in there, as well as the emitter. So you can see this plant's clipping in there. So that's no good. So if we move the microchip back, the only other way to get rid of this would be to make a new clone of that, move it, and then check it again, which isn't super efficient. It'd be nicer to leave the emitter open and be able to move the whole microchip like you can do with the text box. If you have the text gadget displayed in your scene, then it'll kind of move along with that. So that'd be also a nice feature that we can add to that. Most of the time you don't run into that, I found, but it is something you got to keep in mind, that once you place that chip down for the cloning, then that's it, it's kind of there. So what I did was I just went around spawning the chips, spreading them out a little bit far, because I know that we're going to be rendering them, or they're going to be emitting in at a distance, and since they are painted objects, they'll kind of eat up our thermal really quick, and we'll kind of max out and hit, oops, grab the ground by accident, we'll max out pretty quick on our painted objects. So once we have a couple of chips placed, now we can start, we'll start opening them up. This is one of the things that Tap Giles had asked me, how do you see everything if, you know, you can't see everything because it hasn't been emitted yet, and this is how we're going to see everything. We're going to open these up. Obviously, you're going to be limited to how many it's going to be able to display, but we shouldn't hit the cap for this, because you will hit a cap in the editor for looking at stuff. So you can see, and here we kind of have an empty space here. Maybe it's a little bit too crowded over here. I can always push this one back here, and this is when we would do that. So like I said, you can copy the chip, or you can move the laser and the emitter over there. It's kind of annoying, so we'll trim this up a little bit. This one I like to space out a little bit more too. This is kind of just a clump here, so those will fix now. And like I said, these you can close up, but always close up from this. Don't close the emitter, because when we reopen them now, if you want to recheck this, oops, I always hit L1 and square instead of L1 and circle, L1 and X, the emitter will pop back open, and we can see the ground cover, so it saves a little bit of time. So we have to clone this again, so we can move the laser scope and the emitter with the chip at the same time. We'll delete that, and then I said this one's a little bit too close over here. This didn't look so good, so we'll push this back to the house just a little bit. Delete this, and now a pretty decent group. I went through a little bit more meticulously in the other scene to place them, but since we're just kind of demoing this, I'm not going to eat up a whole bunch of time placing crazy amounts of these. So like I was saying, just like anything else in Dreams, we're going to set up a group it, clone the whole group. So I have this big open area over here, and drop that in the back, pick the group up again. Now we'll put it here, because I'm going to delete some of them in the middle, and drop that new group in there. And then we can go back, and this is a little too close to that one. Scope out, and we'll see. Maybe we'll remove this one a little bit. Oops. So now we have a couple of new groups in the back here, and we can do that, and you know, we can open these back up and check the emitters, and we'll see how these all mesh together. You can see these are a little bit too close, so exit that. Pull this a little forward. And delete that one, and I did that over and over for everything. It didn't take that long once you start kind of getting the feel for it, and you know, figuring out what works in your scene and what doesn't. It goes fairly quick, and then you can always just test it. And this one I have circle, I had to trigger the occlusion on and off for demonstration. So you can see the ground cover of the plants popping in. Oops, forgot to take some of the gameplay audio triggers out. This will be a survival horror game eventually when it's out, so there's no crazy HUD or crazy inventory system, anything like that. It's going to eat up my logic, so I'm going to use a lot of it on aesthetics for the game. I feel like I am forgetting something. Oh, that's what I was forgetting. Okay, so in my scene, for something like this, I really couldn't figure out any other way to add this many plants into my scene without hitting any kind of gameplay or any thermal limits at all. So when I had gone through deleting everything, I'd counted up a couple of the big chips that I was using, and for this plant, this ground cover plant chip, I'd used 59 of these. And actually, one thing I didn't count was how many plants in this. Oop, that's doubling, so that's where we are picking our main emitter from. So I believe it's. Oops. Just go back and look at the source. It's going to be easier. I'll just save that so we come back. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 plants. So let me see the calculator, which that is real quick. 59 times 8, so it's 472 plants total. That's you know, as you run around the level, obviously they're not there all at once, but there's no way we were able to place nearly that many plants. Like I said, I had 59 of these chips, and actually pull the plants in. I'll show you how I tried to duplicate the plants to see if it was remotely possible, and I didn't get anywhere nearly as close to it. And I'll show right now. So we got 1. I'll spawn this 20 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's 20 groups of plants, and my thermo is just killed. And if I duplicate this again, we will have 40, and I hit the cap. I believe, let me go down, I think it was like if I add 21 groups of the plants or something like that, it caps out, but that also has to do with the, more to do with the zones, I think that's what the error was giving me. The trigger zones that I have set up for the sound. So as you run through the plants, kind of make a little interaction just to kind of bring a little more life into, you know, the player interacting with stuff. So, so that's basically it.